What if there was a form of money that couldn't be inflated or controlled by governments? A currency that holds its value over time, encourages long-term thinking, and could potentially reshape the global economy. It might sound like a utopian dream, but according to our book today, this reality might be closer than you think. Welcome to CEO's Library. The 1% Bookshelf, your exclusive pass to the most impactful business books shaping industries and driving innovation. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a book that's been making waves in the world of economics and technology. The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous. Now, before we dive into the world of Bitcoin, let's take a step back and consider the money we use every day. Pull out a dollar bill, a euro, or whatever currency you have in your pocket. Have you ever really thought about what gives that piece of paper its value? And more importantly, have you considered how that value might change over time? To understand the significance of Bitcoin, we first need to understand the problem it's trying to solve. And that problem, according to Ammous, lies at the heart of our current monetary system. Imagine you're living in the United States. In 1913, you've worked hard and saved $100, which you decide to stash under your mattress for a rainy day. Fast forward to today, over a century later. You dig out that $100 bill, excited to see what it can buy. But here's the shocking truth, that a $100 bill would now have the purchasing power of just $3.87. That's right. In just over 100 years, the US dollar has lost over 96% of its value. And it's not just the dollar. This phenomenon, known as inflation, affects virtually every government-issued currency in the world. But why does this happen? The answer lies in the nature of our modern monetary system. Unlike the gold-backed currencies of the past, today's money is what economists call fiat currency. The term fiat comes from Latin, meaning let it be done. In other words, these currencies have value simply because the government declares them to be legal tender. The problem with fiat currencies is that they can be created out of thin air. When governments need money to fund wars, social programs, or bail out banks, they don't need to raise taxes or borrow from their citizens. They can simply print more money, and this might sound great at first. After all, who wouldn't want a magic money printer? But there's a catch. As the supply of money increases, each individual unit of currency becomes less valuable. It's simple supply and demand. If there are suddenly twice as many dollars in circulation, each dollar can only buy half as much as it could before. This is why prices seem to always be going up. It's not necessarily that goods are becoming more valuable, but that our money is becoming less valuable. In some cases, this process can spiral out of control, leading to what economists call hyperinflation. One of the most famous examples occurred in Germany in the 1920s. At the height of this crisis, prices were doubling every few days. Workers had to be paid twice a day and would rush out to spend their wages immediately before they lost value. People carted wheelbarrows full of cash to buy loaves of bread. The German mark became so worthless that people burned stacks of it to keep warm because it was cheaper than buying firewood. While this might seem like an extreme example, it's far from unique. In the past century, there have been over 50 cases of hyperinflation around the world. From Hungary in 1946, where prices doubled every 15 hours, to Zimbabwe in 2008, where the government eventually had to print $100 trillion notes. Even in countries that avoid hyperinflation, the steady erosion of purchasing power has profound effects. It discourages saving and long-term investment. Why save money if it will be worth less in the future? Instead, people are incentivized to spend now or to take on debt. This short-term thinking can ripple through society, affecting everything from personal finance to business strategy to politics. So we have to ask ourselves, is there a better alternative? Is there a form of money that can maintain its value over time, encouraging saving and long-term thinking? To answer this question, we need to understand the concept of sound money. Sound money is a term that might not be familiar to many of us, but it's a concept that has shaped economies for thousands of years. At its core, sound money is money that maintains its value over time and is difficult to artificially inflate. Throughout history, different commodities have served as sound money. Seashells, cattle, salt, all have been used as mediums of exchange. But one commodity emerged as the king of sound money: gold. Gold has several properties that make it ideal as money. First, it's scarce. You can't just conjure up more gold out of thin air. Second, it's durable. Gold doesn't rust or decay. A gold coin minted 2,000 years ago is still perfectly intact today. Third, it's divisible. You can divide gold into smaller units without losing value. Fourth, it's portable. A small amount of gold can represent a large amount of value. But perhaps most importantly, gold has a high stock-to-flow ratio. This is a fancy way of saying that the existing supply of gold is large compared to the amount of new gold mined each year. Even if we suddenly doubled gold production, it would take decades to significantly impact the total supply. This makes gold resistant to inflation. These properties made gold the foundation of monetary systems for thousands of years. Under a gold standard, paper money was simply a claim on a specific amount of gold. This put a natural constraint on money creation. Governments couldn't print money at will. They were limited by their gold reserves. The gold standard created a period of unprecedented economic stability and growth. The latter half of the 19th century, often referred to as the golden age of capitalism, saw rapid technological progress, increasing prosperity, and remarkably stable prices. But the gold standard had a downside, at least from the perspective of governments. It limited their ability to fund wars, expand social programs, or bail out banks. As a result, most countries abandoned the gold standard in the 20th century, moving to the fiat system we have today. The shift away from sound money has had profound effects. Without the constraint of gold, the money supply has expanded dramatically. This has enabled governments to fund massive wars, create expansive welfare states, and bail out too-big-to-fail banks. But it has come at the cost of steadily eroding the value of our money. Sound money encourages saving and long-term thinking. When people are confident that their money will hold its value, they're more likely to save for the future. This saving provides capital for investment, driving economic growth and technological progress. Moreover, sound money fosters what economists call low-time preference. This is a fancy way of saying that people become more future-oriented. Instead of seeking immediate gratification, they're willing to delay rewards for greater future benefits. This mindset can transform not just economics but culture as well. Ammous argues that many of the great artistic and cultural achievements of history occurred under sound money systems. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, all happened when money was tied to gold. He suggests that sound money allows people to plan for the long term, investing in education, art, and innovation. So, if sound money is so great, why did we abandon it? And more importantly, is there a way to bring it back in the digital age? This is where Bitcoin enters the picture. In 2008, as the global financial system teetered on the brink of collapse, an anonymous person or group using the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. This 9-page document laid out a vision for a new kind of money, one that combined the scarcity of gold with the convenience of digital transactions. Bitcoin, at its core, is a digital form of sound money. It shares many of the properties that made gold an effective form of money, but with some crucial advantages. Like gold, Bitcoin is scarce. But unlike gold, we know exactly how scarce it is. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. This is hard-coded into the Bitcoin protocol and can't be changed without the consensus of the entire network. This makes Bitcoin even more resistant to inflation than gold. Bitcoin is also durable. As long as the internet exists, Bitcoin will exist. It can't be destroyed or degraded. It's divisible down to 8 decimal places, making it even more divisible than traditional currencies. And it's incredibly portable. You can send any amount of Bitcoin anywhere in the world at any time for a relatively small fee. But perhaps Bitcoin's most revolutionary feature is its decentralization. There's no central authority controlling Bitcoin. No government can print more of it. No bank can freeze your Bitcoin account. It operates on a peer-to-peer network with transactions verified by thousands of computers around the world. This decentralization solves a problem that has plagued digital currencies for decades, the double spend problem. In the physical world, if I give you a dollar bill, I no longer have that dollar. But in the digital world, data can be easily copied. How do you create digital money that can't be copied and spent multiple times? Bitcoin solves this through a technology called the blockchain. Every Bitcoin transaction is recorded on a public ledger that everyone can see. Specialized computers, called miners, compete to verify these transactions and add them to the blockchain. This process, known as proof of work, makes it prohibitively expensive to try to cheat the system. The result is a form of digital money that doesn't rely on trust in any central authority. When you receive a Bitcoin payment, you don't have to trust the sender or any intermediary. You can verify the transaction yourself on the blockchain. This trustlessness is what sets Bitcoin apart from other digital payment systems. When you use PayPal or Venmo, you're trusting those companies to manage your money correctly. With Bitcoin, you're trusting mathematics and open source code that anyone can inspect. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Bitcoin is its monetary policy. Remember how we discussed the problems with fiat currencies and their endless inflation? Bitcoin takes the opposite approach. The supply of new Bitcoins is programmed to decrease over time. Every 4 years, the number of new Bitcoins created is cut in half. This process, known as the halving, means that the rate of new Bitcoin creation is constantly decreasing. Eventually, around the year 2140, no new Bitcoins will be created at all. This predictable, decreasing supply schedule mimics the mining of precious metals. Just as gold becomes harder to mine over time, Bitcoins become harder to mine over time. But unlike gold, we know exactly how many Bitcoins will exist at any point in the future. This monetary policy makes Bitcoin a potentially deflationary currency. As demand for Bitcoin increases over time, but the supply remains limited, each Bitcoin could become more valuable. This encourages saving and long-term thinking, just like the gold standard did in the past. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but what would a Bitcoin-based economy actually look like, and what impact could it have on society? If Bitcoin were to become a global currency, Ammous argues that it could have profound economic, social, and even geopolitical effects. Economically, a Bitcoin standard could lead to a return to sound money principles. In a world where people know their savings will hold their value or even appreciate over time, we might see a resurgence of saving and long-term investment. This could drive capital accumulation, leading to more productivity and innovation. We might also see a reduction in what economists call the business cycle, the boom and bust pattern that characterizes many modern economies. These cycles are often exacerbated by central banks' manipulation of interest rates and money supply. In a Bitcoin economy, these tools wouldn't be available, potentially leading to more stable economic growth. Socially, the implications could be even more far-reaching. Remember how we discussed low-time preference? A sound money system encourages people to think long-term, and this mindset can permeate all aspects of life. And we might see a cultural shift towards delayed gratification and long-term planning. This could manifest in everything from personal health choices, eating well and exercising for long-term health, to education, investing more time in learning, to family planning, thinking about providing for future generations. Ammous even suggests that sound money could lead to a more peaceful world. His argument is that when people have a low time preference, they're less likely to engage in conflict. War and violence have immediate benefits but long-term costs. In a society focused on the long term, the calculus of conflict changes. Geopolitically, Bitcoin could reshape the global financial system. Currently, the US dollar serves as the world's reserve currency. This gives the United States significant economic and political power. A neutral global currency like Bitcoin could level the playing field. International trade could be conducted without the need for exchange rates or worries about currency manipulation. Smaller countries wouldn't be at the mercy of larger countries' monetary policies, and individuals in countries with unstable currencies would have an escape hatch, a way to store their wealth outside the reach of their governments. Of course, this vision of a Bitcoin-based global economy is speculative. Bitcoin faces numerous challenges and criticisms that need to be addressed before it could take on such a role. One of the most common criticisms of Bitcoin is its price volatility. The value of Bitcoin has seen wild swings over its short history. Critics argue that this volatility makes Bitcoin unsuitable as a currency. After all, who wants to accept payment in something that might lose half its value overnight? Ammous counters this by arguing that volatility is a natural feature of a new monetary technology. As Bitcoin's market cap grows and it becomes more widely adopted, this volatility should decrease. He points out that even gold was likely quite volatile when it first began to be used as money. Another major challenge is scalability. The Bitcoin network can currently only process about 7 transactions per second. Compare this to Visa, which can handle tens of thousands of transactions per second. For Bitcoin to serve as a global currency, this throughput would need to increase dramatically. There are various proposals for how to scale Bitcoin, from increasing the block size to creating Layer 2 solutions that operate on top of the Bitcoin network. But implementing these changes in a decentralized system is challenging and often controversial. Bitcoin's energy consumption is another point of contention. The proof-of-work system that secures the Bitcoin network requires significant computational power, which in turn requires electricity. Critics argue that this energy use is wasteful and environmentally harmful. Proponents counter that much of Bitcoin mining uses renewable energy or energy that would otherwise be wasted. They also argue that the energy expenditure is what gives Bitcoin its security and incorruptibility, making it a worthwhile trade-off. There are also regulatory challenges. Governments around the world are still grappling with how to treat Bitcoin. Is it a currency, a commodity, a security? The regulatory uncertainty creates challenges for Bitcoin adoption and integration into the existing financial system. Finally, there's the question of whether governments would allow Bitcoin to challenge their monetary monopoly. If Bitcoin began to seriously threaten fiat currencies, it's possible that governments might try to ban or severely restrict its use. Despite these challenges, Bitcoin has shown remarkable resilience. It has survived numerous predictions of its demise, growing in value and adoption year after year. Whether it can overcome its current limitations and fulfill the vision laid out in the Bitcoin Standard remains to be seen. As we wrap up our discussion of the Bitcoin Standard, it's worth taking a moment to reflect on the big picture. Whether or not you're convinced by Ammos's arguments, his book challenges us to think deeply about the nature of money, something most of us take for granted in our daily lives. Money is more than just a medium of exchange. It's a technology that shapes how we think about value, time, and the future. The type of money we use can influence everything from our personal financial decisions to global economic policies. The current fiat monetary system, for all its flaws, has enabled unprecedented economic growth and lifted billions out of poverty, but it has also led to increasing wealth, inequality, financial instability, and a short-term mindset that may be ill-suited to addressing long-term challenges like climate change. Bitcoin, whether it succeeds or fails, represents a fascinating experiment in monetary technology. It asks us to consider whether a decentralized digital form of sound money could provide a better foundation for the global economy in the 21st century. But regardless of what happens with Bitcoin, the questions raised in the Bitcoin Standard are worth grappling with. How should money work in the digital age? What role should governments play in monetary policy? How can we create an economic system that encourages long-term thinking and sustainable growth? These are complex questions without easy answers, but by engaging with them, we can become more informed citizens, investors, and leaders. Whether you end up being a Bitcoin believer or skeptic, understanding these issues will be crucial as we navigate the economic challenges of the coming decades. I encourage you to dive deeper into these topics. Read the Bitcoin Standard for yourself. Explore the counter-arguments. Form your own opinions. The future of money is being shaped right now, and understanding these trends could give you a significant advantage in your personal and professional life. If you want to get your hands on a copy of the Bitcoin Standard, you'll find a link to the book and its audiobook version in this episode's description. It's a fascinating read that goes into much more depth on the history of money, the economics of Bitcoin, and the potential implications of a Bitcoin-based economy. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. What do you think about the concept of sound money? Do you see Bitcoin as a potential global currency, or do you think its challenges are too great to overcome? Share your opinions in the comments or reach out to us on social media. Before we go, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf. Remember, the books we cover here aren't just academic exercises. They're powerful tools that can reshape your understanding of business, economics, and the world at large. By engaging with these ideas, you're joining a community of leaders and innovators who are always pushing to learn and grow. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf. Remember, the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Happy reading, and see you next time.